Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this interview that Gavin Newsom had with Jen Psaki, who's our former White House press secretary, who went on to MSNBC to do her own thing. And the video, he's obviously been obsessed with Ron DeSantis. And so I want to talk about some things that he talked about in the interview, but also go off into the topic of abortion, particularly how we react to one of the exceptions or one of the more serious topics. So we're going to get kind of deep into this episode regarding that particular issue. Also, the Biden White House, apparently their digital strategy, Axios, is reporting that they're going to be leaning on social media influencers, which is not for his re-election campaign, which is not hard to believe because they have been leaning on social media influencers anyway. As far as TikTok, where they were, briefing people about Ukraine and other things as well. So I'm not surprised at all. And so I think what I do here, at least at Black Tea News, is all the more important since they're really trying to hone on social media. So people on the right really have to do the same as well. Also, there was another shooting the other day, and the media has a very interesting way of phrasing things. Because this is another person who leans left, and it's I don't understand why we can't just do headlines like evil people brutalized other people. Like that should be the headlines as opposed to, I don't know, I'll show you examples of what I mean. It's really grotesque, and I think I hate to sort of speak it. I'm concerned that it's bad enough in general when the media talks about this stuff that there's some infamy that these shooters look toward, but the fact that they're also sort of not totally glamorizing them in death, but they are more sympathetic than they ought to be. It's concerning that they might be doing more harm as they're reporting these things. So, before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. Please make sure that you guys are signing up for emails as well. Hopefully, if you're ever like separate on one sort of account because something happened on social media, at least, we'll have email. Someone was going through some of my TikTok videos and reporting some of them. And I think maybe it was this last person I was going back and forth with maybe because I just started looking. I'm like, that one's flag, that one's flag, that one's flag. And I won all my appeals. I did, but it seemed like they were triggered on some LGBT stuff. And so anyway, no harm, no foul on that account or anything. But people try. So make sure that you guys are signing up with email on blacktnews.com. Check out different merchandise that we have on the site. You guys really liked my shirt yesterday. That I'm not the victim you're looking for. So I wore that yesterday. Today I'm wearing a different shirt though from my store. The Constitution is a Glorious Liberty document. So you can see Frederick Douglass here on my shirt. So very excited. Very excited. So many people try to say, oh, the Constitution is trash, don't like it, or it wasn't made for brown people. And from this is a line from the speech, what is the 4th of July to a slave, or what to a slave is the 4th of July, something like that. Great speech if you've never read it before. But this is a line from that speech. So he believed that people who kind of concede the ground, like, oh, the Constitution was a bad, flawed thing or whatever, he didn't think that people should do that. He thought it was a glorious liberty document. So if you've never read it, it's quite long, but it is so good. So please take the time out to read that speech if you haven't. Also got other merch on the store, like the black tea mug here, the My Money, My Business shirt. Because people would always talk about abortion, and I'm like, they're like, it's not your business. I'm like, does it involve my taxpayer dollars? Because if it does, it kind of seems like it's my business, you know. So we got other stuff like the You Are Not That Special. And I have that in a mug as well. So go ahead and check out the different merch, the OKC boarded stuff. I'm going to order some of that soon. But yeah, so make sure that you guys check out the store. Thank you guys for watching live as well. And thank you guys who watch it back later. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. Costs a stream, costs a room, a website, all that good stuff. So if you can support in that way, God bless you. I very much really appreciate it. So, hold on. Can I share the speech? I will share it on, since you're commenting on YouTube, I'll put it in my community. I don't know how well I'll pull that off while I'm live. I will post it after, I get off air, but I will tell you this. I did write an article comparing that speech to abortion. People don't like when you compare abortion and, slavery, though there's a lot of parallels, which I do make in the article. So I do have an article about that on my website at blacktnews.com, but I will make sure that I post that in my online today. So thank you for being interested. Thank you. So I do have a meme for you guys today. I'm not going to spend long on this topic, but I did see this meme. I guess, I was thinking about a different meme, but this is one of the memes that I have today. I got my memes mixed up. So Biden-Harris, pulling along. Here is the little train with Dylan Mulvaney's face on it. So this is actually in reference to the Biden White House and the social media influencers. So when people were talking about banning TikTok, I thought it was weird that the president would be interested in that at all. Because I recall that they are were briefing different TikTok people, and some of the people that I was aware that they are working with, I'm like, they're just awful, spread misinformation, hateful, bigoted. They'll call people on the right bigoted and hateful, but they're just rude and awful, genuinely awful, I thought that was curious because I'm like, the TikTok will get rid of people on the right, left and right. I do feel like lately it's been a little bit better. I'll say that. I think it's been a little bit better. They're still not great though. It's not like, the freedom that you get on Twitter right now. But people on the left can say the most heinous, racist stuff, especially to white people, and they'll have their accounts up, people will mass report, their stuff will still be there. And it just, a lot of times it feels super one-sided. So as far as them getting rid of TikTok, I feel like it's such a good tool for the left. I'm not saying that people on the right don't enjoy it, that we don't learn a lot of things, that we don't get a lot of good information. I certainly do, especially from like-minded, content people, and there's people who really enjoy my content. TikTok was the first social media thing that, for me, that, really took off and opened up other sort of doors. Like you guys on YouTube are just kind of now latching on. But TikTok was, always not always, it was going strong, and then they shadow banned my main account, which is still like shadow banned, by the way. It's a good place as far as, trying to make a name somewhat for yourself, but they really, really do favor people on the left. So I didn't think it made sense for the Biden administration to want to agree to get rid of it, because there's so many up and coming voters or young voters who access that information and they go out and vote. There's one woman that my sister used to work with, and all she did for her news was get it from TikToks. And this was a grown woman. She was older than my sister. And she was for lack of a better word, she was just a dummy, she wasn't very wise. She was kind of gross too. A bit, she was a white Karen-ish kind of woman. And I'm sorry if your name is Karen and you're offended by that, but you know what I mean when I say it. but she just got all of her information from TikTok, and I can guess what side of the TikTok she got her information from, because she just didn't know a lot about. She thought she knew a lot, but she didn't know anything, right? So if they can continue speaking to that sort of audience, that will still go out and vote, right? That's a huge benefit to the Biden administration or just Democrats in general. The reason why, and Republicans really screw up, I think, being so obsessed about election integrity, which making sure the election's secure and stuff is a good thing. So don't get me wrong, but there's so many people who are just convinced now that that like that's the main issue. When I genuinely think the main issue is that Democrats technically don't need to cheat. They have, at least not stuffing ballot boxes. They have so much influence over the masses as far as social media and mainstream media and entertainment, music, just everywhere, essentially. And then they have now these woke major corporations, Hollywood, just all over the place. Since they have access to so many minds, academia, we let that get taken over from upper, academia to your kids' elementary school. That's all like the left, right? So since they have like such access to people, they even learn and tell each other, train each other how to influence kids and stuff in red areas. They literally will train each other. There was this group in California who were teaching LGBT stuff to kids, making like LGBT clubs, and they would look at their students' like social media profiles or other they'd like spy on their computers kind of when they were doing like home learning and stuff during the pandemic, and then they'd be like, oh, we can invite this kid to our LGBT club or whatever, but it wouldn't be an official club. So if a parent asked them like, is my kid in your club, they'd be like, oh, well, we don't have a list, so we don't know. So they had this grand plan, and then these people who were over it, they were training other people how to do similar things, specifically in red areas. So you have all these people who are teaching each other how to get access to young minds. And since they have that, they are so confident about the popular vote, right? They're so confident about mail-in voting, because if you're too lazy to go to the poll to vote, but if you maybe wouldn't mind turning in an envelope, but that's like the bare minimum, how educated are you on the issues? Our Secretary of State was very happy. In Michigan, you can register to vote on the day that you vote. And I was at a picnic undercover. They didn't know I was Republican. And the Secretary of State was just, bragging like, oh, we had all these same day voters. Like, so many of them were young people. And I'm like, I'm not surprised. And I'm not saying people shouldn't vote. If you don't know stuff, I'd prefer if you didn't, I guess. But just to be honest, but they are very excited to have young and dumb people vote for them, and that's just the truth. And I hate to be so blunt and sound so mean about it, but because I feel like I was a pretty like wise young person, not as wise as I am now. Years bring different perspectives. And there's older people who definitely don't get it. I've debated with people in my life who are older, and they don't know. They're very certain of things they don't know. So just because you're older doesn't mean that you're wise. But a lot of times when I'm on social media and there's really, really absurd comments in my, in the comment section, I'm like, you're 18, right? Like, you're 15, right? You're 21, right? Like, and I'll go to their profile. I'm like, nailed it. I was going back and forth with someone who commented on one of my videos about Jeffrey Marsh. It was that video I did where Jeffrey Marsh showing his video and then showing Mr. Rogers. And Jeffrey Marsh was saying biology is fake. boys and girls, there's no such thing as boys and girls because some girls are taller and some boys are short, just like dumb stuff like that. And so, mind you, every time they're like, just leave Jeffrey alone. And I'm like, do you believe that biology is fake? And they're like, well, no, I don't believe that. I'm like, okay, well, you believe that he's saying something that's untrue to kids. I think that's a problem. Even if you support non-binary people, like, don't you agree that this is at least a problem? And so I contrasted that with Mr. Rogers saying boys are boys from the beginning, girls are girls from the beginning. And she's like, Mr. Rogers, you shouldn't use his stuff to make people feel uncomfortable. And we're not bothering anyone. And I'm just like, I don't agree with you that no one is bothering me. Like, and she's like, being trans isn't affecting your life. And this was an 18-year-old girl who identifies as a boy, who hasn't, like, from what I saw, really started changing outward appearance. Like, she seemed pretty goth, but other than that, which I think that's so sad, you know, these young girls who they just don't want to be women. That's very sad to me. But if she had never commented, I would never know that she, you know, existed at all. But she did comment on my video. She invited herself to the conversation. So I'm just like, okay. So I just added her on another video where I broke it down, talking about, you know, Biden's policies about school lunch programs, Leah Thomas. I talked about Riley Gaines being, like, bombarded, and I think some other examples. And then she's like, that has nothing to do with anything. I'm like, she's like, how is it specifically affecting you? And I'm like, you're gaslighting me. Gaslighting me. And so I was just like, do you believe that Leah Thomas, it was right for him to swim against other girls? And she's like, what would it have to do with anything? And she just would not answer the question, and just kind of ended it with, like, you're uninformed, get well soon. And that, I guess I'll leave it at that, because there's nowhere to go when you just won't be upfront with your language. But I'm like, I'm not surprised she was 18, and I hate to be discriminatory of people's ages again. You know, I feel like I was a pretty wise 18-year-old. And I remember when Obama was running, I was 19 during that year in 2018. Yeah, I said 19. Yeah, I was 19 because that was the first time I got to vote in, like, a presidential election. And my younger sister was also voting for the first time as well. And she's just a year younger than I am. But anyway, we were having church out. We didn't have a building, so we were having church at a hotel. It was like at a Ramada Inn. And it was like, that was like the hot spot for, like, churches. There's, like, a couple different churches that would have church in that hotel. And so this guy came up to me, this older gentleman, you know, and he might have been at least 60 or above, you know, maybe older. But and he's like, oh, who are you voting for? And so I'm like, I'm going to vote, you know, for McCain and Sarah Palin, and they're like, why aren't you voting for Obama? This is a black guy. And so I'm like, well, he doesn't support things that are, you know, coinciding with, that align with my my religious values. And like, what do you mean? Obama's a Christian? And then I start just going through a list of, like, things that he supports and things he said he's going to do, and the black liberation theology and other stuff, and his pastor and all different stuff. And he didn't know the things that I was addressing. And he didn't know what to do with it. He was just kind of like, okay. So he just, you know, thought he was going to get a young person civically engaged, and I schooled him. So I totally believe that there's young people out there who know their stuff, and there's people who can be out there and know their stuff and be on the left. I just think you're wrong about some things, but they want these young people to vote because they're very passionate. They're not super informed, but the information they get feeds their feelings instead of feeds their minds, I think, is the best kind of way to put it. You know, you saw so much, for example, emotion surrounding the Don't Say Gay bill. And I'm like, just go read what the bill actually says. It's just a few pages long. It's totally uncontroversial. The most controversial thing about it is it doesn't go far enough, in my opinion, but they're all like crying on the internet about it. So there's just so much that people don't know. There's a video of Michael Knowles talking at a event, and he's talking to a young girl about abortion, and she's like, why are you calling it murdering babies? And he's like, because it's murdering baby. She's like, it's not a baby, it's a fetus. And he's like, do you know what fetus means? It just means like offspring or little one or whatever. So like, that's your child. Yeah, so it is murdering baby. So she changed it. She's like, okay. And then she like, I think calls it compass cells, and then just like rhetoric that is ridiculous. That's just not true. But I guess there's adults that believe that, but mostly you see kids very, very, very passionate about the issue who just absolutely know not much about it. And these are the people who the Biden administration is going to depend to mobilize and go ahead and go to the polls and vote. So Republicans that are just like, oh, what are we going to do about Dominion software? It's like, bruh, what are you going to do about the kids on TikTok that are watching, TikTokers that the Biden invited to the White House? What are you going to do about that? And there's nothing that you can do other than try to combat it. So, again, make sure that you guys, if you like what I do here, that you go ahead and support Black Tea News. One of the most important things to me about this, and people do ask me like, well, you should run for office. I don't want to run for office. And I definitely don't want to do it right now. But I think what I do right now is important, and what other people like me do is important, to try to pierce through that veil and not just do it on social media, but to encourage you to go out and talk to your friends and your family about these topics. Because if you are too scared to do it, there's a very passionate teenager, young adult who will make that case and, will berate their dad or somebody until they just relent. So make sure that you have to be able to speak up on these issues, or you're going to wake up one day and you're not going to have a country. You're not going to have a country. So, speaking of misinformation, I just want to show you guys this tweet that I saw today that's really bonkers, from Ted Lieu, who is a congressperson. He says, husband of Betty, the love of my life, father of two great kids, USAF veteran, member of Congress, in that order. Also, empathy is good. And that's his profile on Twitter. So I just wanted to share that. The empathy is good, because someone had tweeted out about how someone said Reshma Sanjani said, well, it happened. That lone federal judge in Texas just single-handedly suspended the FDA's approval of mifepristone, a drug that has been used safely for 23 years, even safer than Viagra. The decision takes effect a week from today. So he retweeted that, and I got to show you his tweet. So it's pretty wild. Right? So you guys might have seen this before, right? I don't know if you have or haven't, but that was going around for a while on social media, all over the place, on Instagram, on TikTok. There was an alarming amount of videos with this Petri dish. If you saw the debate with Michael Knowles and Rimzik, gosh, what was her name? Dante Rimzik. She was like, at first she was like, at the very beginning, she's like, I'm here to educate your viewers. And then at one point she pulls out a picture of like this to show everyone what a baby looks like at 9 weeks, right? That's what they're saying. This is what a baby looks like at 9 weeks. So he says, below is a pregnancy at 9 weeks. Religious zealots judge said mifepristone caused psychological trauma to women who saw abortion remains. Under this religious reasoning, judge could ban Viagra for psychological trauma to any men using Viagra to have sex outside of marriage. This is so dumb on so many different levels, but we'll just address the fact that how did if that's a baby at 9 weeks, question is, how did the baby get in the Petri dish? How did the baby get in the Petri dish? That's the $1,000,000 question, right? Because babies at 9 weeks definitely don't naturally form in Petri dishes, right? So how did it get there? And kudos to Matt Walsh, because he definitely did ask that question when Bronte literally whipped out a picture and was like, see, this is what the baby looks like. And she's a medical student trying to give accurate medical misinformation. She made an appeal to authority the whole entire time about how the medical community, she's a student, she knows so much better, blah, blah, blah. And Matt and Michael Knowles doesn't know much or anything, or you have to appeal to the experts. And she dared to whip out a picture of this exploded tissue. And he asked, how did the baby get into the Petri dish? And so she said, it's been sucked out. It's been aborted, right? So if you suck a baby up through a little tube, and then like clean out the blood and whatever, you might just get sac after it's just been just destroyed, So it's so dishonest, and so many people have debunked it. The amount of people, though, like on the abortion side, who tried to push this image as if this is, and it's crazy because there are pro-choice people who've had abortions before, not abortions, well, yes, abortions, but also miscarriages. The naked eye. They're well aware that you can see a baby with the naked eye. So they're like, well, this is with a microscope, and this is how you can see it, because this is what it actually looks like with the sac and all. Like, you can actually see a baby with your eyeballs at 9 weeks. So this is what a baby would look like with eyes and fingers and stuff forming, and all the major organs have begun to form as well. So, I mean, the heart is beating, even though like people say that's just a manufactured sound. Like, we should at least be honest about the sort of things that go on. If you support it, we should at least be able to be honest about what's happening. If that's what you support. But people don't want to be honest because it puts them in a really rough spot when they are. So it's ludicrous how much that narrative just persisted. So moving on, because we're going to continue talking about this abortion topic again. We're going to get pretty deep in it, in a conversation that a lot of people don't want to have, or like to bypass, or like to just jump to extremes or whatever. And I'm going to try to be as, delicate as, but honest and firm as possible with this. But first, I want to just show you in general this video with Gavin Newsom, and then we will go into this topic. So he did an interview with Jen Psaki, who was our former press secretary, and it was about how Governor Ron DeSantis signed the permitless carry, law and stuff. So and supporting that. So here's that part of that interview. Loading.
Pretty startling split screen. You had 1,000 kids.
Okay.
There was a pretty startling split screen. You had 1,000 kids in Nashville out there protesting the lack of action on gun reform measures. Well, you had Governor DeSantis signing a bill on permitless carry behind closed doors.
Yeah,
what did you make of that?
Scared to death.
Who is he scared of?
Scared of the people. Scared of the
people
public.
In Florida?
Yeah, that overwhelmingly oppose that position. But I think the majority of NRA members, probably oppose that position. Nope.
So, first I want to say this is really stupid. It's crazy to me how much the left love. I mean, it's not crazy that they love this guy because he's right up their alley. But to think that if there's two Americas, and one, if we have a choice between a Gavin Newsom and a Ron DeSantis, I understand where people on the left want to go, people on the right want to go, but there's people who aren't totally crazy, right? Who are still like Democrats who might be like, he governs the state pretty well though. Like, I don't like all the cultural wars kind of stuff, but he still governs pretty competently. I mean, you don't start winning just by like 19 points in re-election because you're, it's such a red state, because, he did not easily win his first election. He had to come and improve himself. Now, you also have to wonder, like, how are independents going to, sway? So if you had your choice between Gavin Newsom, who was very tyrannical with COVID, who had all these restaurants and stuff shut down. I'll never forget this video of this woman who was who had set out stuff outside so she could try to run her business like outdoor, and then they told them that they couldn't even do that. So she went to her restaurant to get some supplies because she was running a protest. And she looked outside, and not too far from her restaurant, just like a couple feet away, there was like some catering set up for a movie business, for a movie. And they had like set up for where they're going to do food and stuff. And so it doesn't make sense that the business owners, like small business owners, they couldn't run their businesses, but it's California, so people still have to do their movies because that's so essential. And you have like these catering companies who are paying, who are doing food and are allowed to set up, but you can't run your business so you can feed your family. So there's that kind of crazy stuff going on top of a whole list of other things that I could say. While Gavin Newsom's going out to the French Laundry, is that, I think it was called, the restaurant, and unmasked with his friends hanging out. So you have all this hypocrisy going on. So you have, that vision, or you have Ron DeSantis who's like, you know what, let's err on the side of liberty, let's, not shut down our way of life totally. And at the same time, he still was like, hey, let's, get people vaccinated if they want to be vaccinated, and do that, take care of our elderly, etc. So you got Ron and you got DeSantis. You got Ron, who's like, I don't think you should be teaching gender identity to 3-year-olds. And they got Gavin Newsom, who's like, hey, let me sign this bill. So if there's a big age gap between someone who's dating a minor, then they're supposed to be able to do that and won't have the harshest penalties thrown at them, and it'll be at the judge's. Yeah. and people will push back on that law I just mentioned and say, well, it wasn't a pro-like pedo bill. It was more like they were trying to make the same rules for anal sex and things that gay people prefer, that people who are straight, their kind of sex. But I'm like, why don't you just criminalize them both more, as opposed to making it lax? But there's other things I could mention. So Tale of Two Americas. But Gavin Newsom saying that Ron DeSantis is afraid of the people, and that's why he's allowing them to be armed and carry around guns. I don't think that's a person who's actually afraid of their constituents. Like, the government starts limiting people's liberties when they're afraid of them. They don't make it so that they can exercise more of them, right? So but he's not too bright. He's not too bright. Let's keep going.
Background checks? No background, none? Really? I mean, no training. Why would we do that with weapons of war?
Which is
if you get a gun from a licensed dealer, you have a background check. If you go to the store, you'll have a background check. If you go to a gun show and you're getting from a licensed dealer, there will be a background check. If you order a gun online, they will send it to a store where you pick it up. And guess what? There's a background check. So saying there's no background check for what you to exercise your Second Amendment right. But if you want that gun, there still has to be a background check. Now, people mention universal background checks or whatever, but you can't do a universal background check without having, which regular background checks will check, like, hey, did you do domestic violence and other stuff, like, things that people expect to be checked on background checks. We do check for those things. But a universal background check would require, they're unenforceable without some kind of registration. And people don't like the idea of that, because if you want to know where all the guns are, maybe that's because you want to take them. So so he's just getting into full-blown propaganda right here, and Jen Psaki, a former White House press secretary, is just, going along with it.
What permitless carry means.
That's extreme in the extreme. That's what's happened. Of course, not surprising, but a guy doesn't believe.
Okay, so this is where the conversation is starting to shift from the guns, and he's shoehorning this other topic in here.
Believe that a young girl should have the freedom to determine her own reproductive future. It has to bear the child of her rapist in the name of freedom, without the exception of rape and incest. I mean, that's what we're getting from these folks. So, look, it sickens me in my core, I'll tell you. And you would have more insight than anybody, so you can validate. What happened in Tennessee triggered this trip. Just triggered. I can't. I called the White House, full disclosure. I said, I can't take it. I can't. I got 4 young. I can't. I was given speeches, the same speech you've seen every politician give, in Monterey Park, down in Salinas. I gave it prior down in Gilroy. Gave them when I was mayor. We see the dance. Uvalde. I mean, I can't. I just can't take it. I can't take it. And then to see the same governors, these talk about mental health, unique apparently in America. To talk about, our parents and our family. I mean, all the BS. And then they claim to care about life when the number one cause of death for our children is guns. It's shameful. They're shameful.
So, yes, people do care about mental health, and we'll get to that. Well, I'll just briefly mention this right now. There was another shooting the other day, and these are the sort of like headlines that you see breaking from the Daily Beast. 23-year-old Connor Sturgeon was a former varsity hoop star and finance grad turned banker who had reportedly been fired from his job in recent days. One former friend described him as a popular kid in high school. So why is your tweet kind of leading with that? Shouldn't it just be like psycho killer kills people in mass shoot? Like, shouldn't it be something like that? And like, oh, he was a popular kid in school. It's such a weird headline. And so there's this other one from the Daily Mirror, and there was a couple different ones that were kind of sympathetic toward the Nashville shooter. Audrey Hale could have been a children's illustrator, as their artwork was whimsical and childlike, a former teacher has revealed. And her artwork wasn't, at least what I saw, it was basic, it wasn't that great. But showing there's as I said earlier, there's like a bit of infamy that these people see, and it's like, oh, if I go out in this sort of way, I can matter in this sort of way, and they'll go out and cause harm. It is a huge mental health issue, but why are we making any of these people also sympathetic, especially if they're on your side of that? Because if it was a right-wing person, they're just like a white supremacist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They don't do that kind of stuff. Which, by the way, this new shooter, he was apparently left-leaning, and there were some different posts, which they were removing some of these on social media, at least on Twitter. But I believe these are the ones like, they won't listen to words or protests. Let's see if they hear this. So that's the one where I at least heard that was his. But these people are deeply unwell. And unfortunately, there's a lot of unwell people who will latch so strongly onto politics anyway, and they don't. And we have such hyper hysterical language. I wrote an article on my website, Black Teen News, about how I do not think that we care enough about mental health, and we are actually making people crazy in our society, how we communicate with each other, how we address politics. It's just really, really crazy. Like, back to that Ted Lieu situation. Why try to like brain warp people to believe that image of like that exploded goo was a baby at 9 months? Now, I guess it really, in some way doesn't matter too much, because even if that's what it looked like inside of you, you know, in 9 months is gonna like be a normal looking baby, right? So on one hand, I guess it doesn't matter, but they're trying to say, look at this, it looks ugly, it's inhumane, it's not even like human looking, and this is what they're making such a big deal about at 9 weeks, so you should be able to abort. So there are people who are buying into that, and then there's women who buy into it and feel so I don't know, angry and outraged because they're taking away this right for this glob of goo or whatever, but those are lies. So there's just hyper hysterical language, and whether it's that or whether it's the trans issue, and they're like, they're coming for the trans kids, they don't want you to exist. I'm like, what do you mean we don't want them to exist? Like, we're having a conversation. What do you mean they don't exist? We're just not making people well. We're not making people well. I mean, think about the person who came from California, where Newsom's from, to kill Brett Kavanaugh over a Roe v. Wade decision. Just insane. Just insane. But anyway, back to the abortion topic. He said the number one killer of kids is guns. It's abortion, and it's not even close. And if you're like, oh, they're not children or whatever, a child is a son or daughter of any age. Once you are conceived, you exist. You can't undo it, etc. But one thing that I find very interesting, and let me go back to when he first brought it up.
Checks? No background, none? Really? I mean, no training. Why would we do that with weapons of war?
Which is what permitless carry means.
That's extreme in the extreme. That's what's happened. Of course, not surprising if a guy doesn't believe that a young girl should have the freedom to determine her own reproductive future. It has to bear the child of her rapist.
Okay, so this is what we want to talk about. Bear the child of her rapist. People will get so mad at me, or just mad in general, if you refer to a baby as a baby, or if you refer to them as, especially if you say innocent baby, if you say child, they'll be like, no, it's a fetus, it's a zygote, it's a parasite, it's a clump of cells. There's only one instance where I'm aware of where these people will admit that it's a child, when it's the rapist's child. Have you noticed that? That's when people like Gavin Newsom and Joe Biden will admit that it's a child, when they are giving sort of ownership and trying to mark their identity with what their disgusting criminal father did. That is when they will acknowledge that is a child, when they can introduce this trauma and a stigma to them. That's when it's a child. That's when they'll acknowledge that. So let's go back to Biden when he was lamenting over the court's decision regarding Roe v. Wade. He used the same sort of language.
The court's decision to do so will have real and immediate consequences. State laws banning abortion are automatically taking effect today, jeopardizing the health of millions of women, some without exceptions. So extreme that women could be punished for protecting their health. So extreme that women and girls who are forced to bear their rapist's child. With the child, a consequence. It just stuns me. So extreme that doctors will be criminalized for fulfilling their duty to care. Imagine having a young woman have to carry the child of incest as a consequence of incest. No option.
So, regardless of how you come into the world, which someone in the comments noted that their brother was conceived and raped, and they were loved. Once you exist, you do exist. And there's such hyper hysterical language around this topic. Everyone tells you like abortion isn't black and white. It's a very nuanced conversation. But when it comes to this particular segment of this conversation, there's so much disdain for people who aren't like, you just gotta let them be killed. If you don't feel that, if you don't jump to death is the solution, abortion is the solution, then Sally Cohn once told Lila Rose from Live Action, they were, debating on Crossfire. She said, you are granting more rights to that woman's body for the rapist than the actual woman, which is ridiculous and disgusting for someone to say. But he has no rights. He's a criminal. He violated her. He should go to jail. He should be met with the law and prosecuted to the fullest extent. But the truth is that he will at least get due process. So this terrible criminal who's done this heinous act, we as a society do support his rights and give him more dignity, and we afford him more dignity than we do to an unborn child. So I do want to throw out these questions to people when they consider this issue is, do you believe that an abortion will undo what happened? The answer is obviously no. Do you believe that it will that it will heal the trauma? Now, abortion doctor Warren Hearn, who's well renowned in the field, especially late-term abortion, he let it be known, like, that's not how you treat it. The abortion counselor still should get that woman psychological help for what she's endured. You do not treat the trauma from rape by having an abortion. They're not the same thing. And so I'm going to play a mental health counselor, a testimony that she gave on this issue. But another thing to consider is, do you believe that a child should be punished for the crimes of their father? And again, do you believe that a rapist deserves more rights and dignity afforded to him than the unborn child? Because that's what we advocate for as a society. Even pro-life people who grant the exception. And I understand why people grant the exception. Because it's such a terrible, it's difficult enough when you consensually get pregnant and the pregnancy is at an inconvenient time, or you're tied to a partner you don't necessarily like, or you don't think they're father material, or you just don't have the money, or you're just concerned about a bazillion other things, and a baby wasn't in the picture. And so you have the rights of the mother and sort of her bodily autonomy versus like the rights of the child and their autonomy, or at least their life, right? Their right to life. And it's like, what do you do? So Equal Rights Institute president, says, like, if violence is the option, we have to at least make sure that that's the best option on the table. And if we're going to argue that abortion is necessary, I want it to be not option A and not option B. I want it to be all the way at the end. That's how I feel, right? I don't really want to exist at all, but at least like follow my logic there. So my question is, why is it that we as a society, we're so quick to jump to that? And when we talk about abortion, so many people jump to that, when we know that it's like less than 1%. And I think people on the right who don't want to talk about it, I understand them not wanting to talk about it for various reasons, but one of them reasons being like, it's less than 1%. Like, so I don't want to, waste time, like, going through that if that's not even what you believe, which I think there's validity in that sort of argument. However, that's still a lot of women who go through that, we deserve to have the discussion. So, I don't mind having the discussion. I think we should have the discussion, but I think we should have more compassion when we have the discussion, especially, people on the right, but people on the left, or people who are for against and against abortion. We need to have more compassion on both sides, because just calling the baby the rapist child, what's been discovered in different sort of studies is that women who choose to carry their children, outside factors on how people judge them, how people look at them, if they question how culpable they were to it, to the action itself, questions like that. I didn't read this in a study, but when I hear people say, questioning the rape, or saying like, oh, well, if they had just gone to the hospital, like people on the right, folks need your compassion. Your compassion is so important to people. It really is. So just try not to say things like that. But also the idea that they're carrying a stain that needs to be removed. So Biden grilling in that rapist child, Newsom saying that rapist child, I've heard it time and time again. So I'm going to play a video from Lottie Dupree. I don't think Lottie is her real name, but she's someone that I follow, and she was abused for years. And I've shared this video on my social media before. I don't think this is on her channel anymore because she's been banned, but she came back. But this is her telling her story after she's replying to someone about having someone's rapist child, and this is her reply.
Well, no, you need to give birth to your rapist child.
Hi, I'm Lottie. When I was 15, I got pregnant after years of being raped. If you follow me, you've heard that like millions of times now. It's almost like a script, actually, every time I say that now. Do you know why? Do you know why I have to repeat that so many times? Because every time I log on to this application, there's some random pro-choice woman saying, well, what if, hypothetically, there's this teenage girl and she gets raped and she gets pregnant and abortion? And of course I will see that video and I will go, hey, excuse me, I was actually pregnant from rape as an underage teenager, and I'm pro-life, and my daughter was valuable, and I loved her, and she wasn't a rapist baby, she was my baby. That's literally what my last video was doing 3 days ago. But I'm going to keep saying this until women like you start listening to me. My rape for years of grueling abuse did not justify murdering my child. I would never have done that to her. Her life was valuable. You don't speak for girls like me. And hey, if you're tired of hearing this, imagine how tired I am of saying it.
So that was Lottie. So the mental health counselor Robin Atkins I'm about to play, she's someone who has gone through rape, has gone through abortion, and is now pro-life, but she's a mental health counselor, and so she gave a testimony regarding an abortion law, and so she gives out a lot of really good information, quite a few of these things I actually put in my book.
Report that in both the case of high-risk pregnancy and fetal anomaly, the way they are treated by medical staff and support systems has more to do with the trauma experienced than the events that are occurring in their bodies. In the case of fetal anomaly, termination appears to lead to increased risk of PTSD. Abortion has never been a therapy modality or intervention for any type of mental health trauma. Pregnancy following a rape may or may not be experienced as trauma. Anywhere from 50 to 80% of women who become pregnant after rape choose to carry their child to term, and of those who terminate, up to 80% regret it. The appropriate response to a traumatic pregnancy following a rape is compassion, active listening, motivational interviewing, and evidence-based therapeutic modalities. Abortion is neither necessary nor evidence-based to treat trauma. Research hasn't shown any positive mental health effects from abortion. Research suggests any reproductive loss, including abortion, increases risk of mental health complications, including suicide, when compared to live birth.
So, she's also experienced traumatic pregnancies. Like, I think we all know that pregnancy can be difficult, but she had one where she was like bedridden and suicidal. So there's ways to help women get through their different traumas regarding pregnancy. You can have trauma from pregnancy, but just because you are sexually assaulted and impregnated doesn't mean that the pregnancy itself will be inherently traumatic. But even if it were a traumatic pregnancy, abortion isn't still how you treat mental health. They're different things. They're different things. So I'd like to have more conversations about this. I mean, I've touched on it. Like I said, I did include a section on this topic in my book, but Robin Atkins is a wealth of knowledge, and so I think she should be elevated and talked about more, and other people who've studied this issue. There will be people who say that there are women who report to have abortions that they have a feeling of relief, relief isn't, relief comes and goes in waves, like guilt and shame. So you can feel relief. And Robin Atkins said that she felt relief for not being, when she had an abortion, she wasn't tied to a guy that she's not fond of. But now she'd be like, I'd rather have that association with him to bring her baby back. And so just because someone might feel relief over a situation, you can feel relief because you're no longer pressured by your boyfriend or your family, your friends around you, all kinds of different reasons why you might experience some kind of relief, but that doesn't mean that you won't feel anxiety or shame or guilt or a whole host of other sort of things as well. So the last thing, I don't think I got to point number 5, question number 5 is adoption an option? And I don't think that adoption should be the first thing that people bring. I think sometimes on the right, maybe we're too quick to bring it up. It's out there, it's available. And there's plenty of parents waiting if that's the route that you want to go. But I think we should encourage women that that they are strong enough, if that's what they want to do, that they can make it, and that we can help and aid and give resources if that's what they want to do. But I understand, and I have talked to women who've been sexually assaulted and then given their children up for adoption, and are very glad that they're, even though they don't have a part in raising their child, that they're still proud of them, at least from a distance. So it's very regretful that, again, that there's such disdain for this topic, and that people will jump to language like rapist child. It's so amazing to me that the fathers are like non-existent in the discussion, unless they're pro-choice, and then they're just supporting women. It's like, oh yeah, give them a hand clap because they're supporting women. But if you're a father who's like, I'd like you to not destroy my offspring, then you're trash. You have no right. There was a couple weeks ago, there was a guy who was mourning on Twitter because his girlfriend aborted his child. And man, the way that people talked about him was just egregious. I'm like, men don't even have the right to mourn their kids. So men have no ownership even over grief, because that's a woman's choice, and you shouldn't be mourning that because it was her right, and you have no right to do that. But when it's a rapist, though, then all of a sudden we have to acknowledge sort of his ownership and a mark on the child. That's wild to me. That's wild to me. So if you are pro-choice and you have listened to this whole thing, I would just, I understand where you're coming from. I understand why you believe that there should be an exception. And I don't believe that it's coming from a place of wanting to kill babies or anything like that. I think it's coming from a place of compassion for the woman in her situation. I don't think the worst of you, even if you may think the worst of me. I don't think the worst of you. But is it the best option? But if you talk about this issue, I just implore you to not use stigmatizing language like that, and to have compassion for all the women who decide to keep their babies, and all the children who are born to mothers who have those babies. Women like, it's believed that Eartha Kitt was a rape, a child conceived a rape. There was the Miss Gatto, who was Valerie Gatto, who was in the USA pageant or Teen USA some years ago. There's Miss Bennett, who just ran. Kathy Barnett, who ran against Dr. Oz in the primary. Her mother had her when she was 12. And there's a great interview with her on Live Action's website, or at least their social media. And her mother said it wasn't a choice, it was a life. And so I can't imagine all the hardships that she went through having a child that young and basically having her adolescence stolen from her. But her daughter did say, once she realized how young her mother was, it helped her to forgive her for mistakes that she made being a young mother and not really knowing how to mother. And no one wants any situations like this to happen at all. And sometimes people are so quick to say, you just want the woman, or no one wants these situations. Nobody wants these things. So I would appreciate if we could just stop thinking the worst of each other and these circumstances, and really question again, will it undo what happened? The answer is no. Will it heal the trauma? Abortion is not how we treat trauma. I guess you can disagree with that, but that's a really big question. Do you believe that a child should be punished for the crimes of their father? Do you believe that it's right in our society that we give more rights to the rapist than we do the child? And is adoption an option? So those are the questions that I want to leave you with regarding this topic. And I wish that we could all really kind of have more honest conversations about this, because I do think it's important, even if it's the less than 1%, right? Because these people still matter. Their children still matter. Whether they decide to keep them or not, they still matter. So really, really disappointing and disgusting when the leader of the free world tries to mark a child like that. And just, it's very interesting that they'll call it a child. They'll acknowledge that it's a child when it's the rapist's child. I think we should do better. I think we need to do better. So, I think that's, trying to think, was there anything else that I wanted to address today? Was there anything else that I wanted to address before I let you go? I don't think so. So I do thank you guys for joining me today. I'm going to read through the comments really quick, so don't mind my squint. Looks like you guys are really talking to each other. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. If you like different merch like the Constitution's Glorious Liberty document and other kind of stuff, I got it on my website. You guys can check out all that good stuff. Let me just show another pic. Well, we got the pro-choice men are sus. Definitely gonna, we'll see me that wearing that sooner or later. But also got the Black Teen News mug. So check out different merch. Make sure you guys are signing up for different email alerts. And again, what I do here at Black Teen News, I hope that it helps. I hope that it encourages other people to have meaningful discussions with each other, with their families and their friends, and not just online. But the compliments that I get are really touching, especially people reaching out, saying that it's helping them refine their arguments or encouraging them, to go out and have discussions. And it's going to be really important, again, because this Biden is like employing all these young influencers. So I like people like run for office. I'm like, I think my calling right now is doing what I'm doing right now, and I like to grow. So again, if you can support Black Teen News, I hope that you'll consider going to the website and supporting in that kind of way. And if you can't, I thank you guys for watching, for commenting, and hitting the like buttons, etc. That does all really help. So again, my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion, is available for pre-order. So please go ahead and check that out. I do have a section in the book. It does cover biology, theology, rights, and philosophy, all kinds of different stuff. But there is a section in the book that deals with the typical quote unquote exceptions. So there's a section that covers sexual assault. There's a section that covers the life of the mother, and there's a section that covers illness of a child. I feel like, I think the book is really good. I feel that those sections are very strong, and I think it will really inspire a lot of good conversation and understanding on those particular topics. So please go ahead and consider getting the book, even if you're not like super religious. I think it'll help you with this particular topic in general of abortion, but also maybe understanding the minds of so many people who are on the pro-life side of the aisle, who obviously have, religious sort of leanings and influence and stuff. Man, there was a crazy interview I saw with the Twitch streamer Destiny and abortion, and it was wild. I don't have time to address it today, but man, it was crazy. It was crazy. But please make sure that you pre-order the book. It's available on, you can get it on Kindle, you can get it on Nook right now if you pre-order it. It's going to be available on the 26th of this month, so we're very close to it. It will be available on paperback, so if you, and eventually hardcover, but so if you're interested in those mediums, make sure that you are signing up on the website so you will be made aware when that'll be available to pre-order. So God bless you guys, and I'm going to see you tomorrow.